And I really didn't know what to do because I was sitting here like, I don't have a lot of money to my name. I don't even have a job. I don't know what to do. And the guy I was seeing at the time said, if you want to be a shark, then be a shark. And I was like, okay, that's that. So I called and I turned down the job offer, which everyone thought I was absolutely bonkers for doing. And I decided I was going to bet on myself.
Welcome to Business Origin Stories. I'm Amy Schutte, your guide to crafting a magnetic message for a profitable business. This is the podcast for you if you're ready to claim the transformative power of your own origin story and use it to create a brand that finally stands out. We're here to level up, but more importantly, I'm here to help you elevate your influence, your community, and your impact on the world. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. And remember, the stories you tell yourself are your greatest currency. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Business Origin Stories podcast. Today's episode is a treat. I am interviewing Chandler J, who is the visionary behind the cutthroat law firm, Lethal Legal, where she helps entrepreneurs and creators eliminate confusion around protecting their brand. Basically, she's the go-to expert for safeguarding your intellectual property. Chandler is a powerhouse online and off, and I was just so excited to connect with her on this interview. In full disclosure, I hired her basically immediately afterward to help me with one of my new trademarks, and her onboarding process was immaculate. So as Chandler likes to say, business is a battlefield, and she's here to help you become a high-caliber CEO by learning to navigate the legal side of entrepreneurship with unshakable confidence and a rock-solid legal backbone. Let's go. Hi, Chandler. How are you?
So good. How are you?
Good. I've been excited about this conversation for a few weeks now. Can you tell everybody where you are and then what you do for a living?
Absolutely. So I am in the sunny state of Arizona. I'm in Scottsdale. I absolutely love it here. And I am an attorney for entrepreneurs and founders.
You have a very cool origin story. And since this podcast is called Business Origin Story, can we talk a little bit about your background? Because I loved it when I first heard it. So give everyone a little bit of color. How did you get here?
So I'm originally from Iowa, and I was like, Iowa is not for me. I'm not made for Iowa. I need to leave. I just felt so limited in Iowa. So I moved out to Arizona with about $2,000 to my name. And I had just taken the bar in Iowa. And the way the bar works is it's state specific. So you have to be licensed in the state that you're practicing, et cetera. So I took the bar in Iowa, but I moved out to Arizona 2 days after I took the bar. Yeah. So when that happened, then you have to wait to see if you pass the bar. I did. That's great. However, my concern wasn't, did I pass it in Iowa? I was like, did I get a high enough score for Arizona? Which I did. But then I had to essentially apply to be admitted to the Arizona bar, which is this whole process that takes forever. So I was sitting here kind of twiddling my thumbs for quite a while before I could even start practicing. Knowing what I know now, I would have been able to start practicing right away, because everything I do is federal. So I can help. Doesn't matter where I'm licensed, but I was set on getting licensed in Arizona. And when I got licensed here, I was getting job offers from these different firms. And there was a firm in particular that was like, hey, we'd love to hire you, and we will offer you, $60,000 a year, and you will work about 12 hours a day, but we're going to give you a gym membership, and you will pay for you to go on a 2-week vacation after 5 years. And I'm just like, that does not sound very convincing.
It sounds like a horrible job offer.
Yeah,
like a lot.
What kind of deal is that? And, granted, being in the position of hiring now, I get it, where it's hiring a brand new attorney. It's hard. However, we have so much in loans too, and you can go make that with a college degree. You don't need a law degree to go make $60K a year. And so I was in a position where I was like, I could take this job, or I could bet on myself. And the person I was seeing at the time, we had gone to the Joker's movie when it was released forever ago. We'd gone to the Joker's movie, and I had to call this firm and give them a definitive answer within like an hour or two after this movie. And I really didn't know what to do, because I was sitting here like, I don't have a lot of money to my name. I don't even have a job at all. So maybe I should just take a job. I don't know what to do. And the guy I was seeing at the time said, if you want to be a shark, then be a shark. And I was like, okay, that's that. So I called and I turned down the job offer, which everyone thought I was absolutely bonkers for doing. And I decided I was going to bet on myself. And I was in one of those positions where, I mean, if you can't really fail because I already don't have a job. So like if the firm doesn't take off, there's not much to fall. Like I'm not falling very far. So I think that gave me a sense of safety. Whereas I felt like I couldn't really fail because there was no failing in my position. And I've always been of the belief that it's option A. Like don't even create an option B for yourself. Because when you create an option B, that's saying option A might not work. And I applied that same concept when I went to law school. Everyone's like, what are you going to do if you don't get into law school? I'm like, I don't know. It's not an option. I'm getting into law school one way or another. Right. And so I kind of applied that same theory when it came to building my firm. And now here we are years later. And I never went and took a firm job. I've done my own thing.
That's an amazing origin story. And what I love about it though is no option B. We're just going.
Option B.
That's really brave, right? Because so many people would have said, go ahead and take that job just so you have some cash coming in, give yourself a safety net. That's a typical approach, but you truly are an entrepreneur if you're like, I'm just going to go be a shark.
We're going to make it happen one way or another.
I want that framed on my wall. That's such a good reminder.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's big. So and in the process of doing that, did you figure out, okay, this is what I want to do with entrepreneurs at that point? How did you go from like, I'm going to burn the boats here and be a shark, but then now to have really created this very successful, we're going to talk about your brand in just a minute because I'm obsessed with your website and your whole branding philosophy, but how did you get from that moment to where you are now? What was the kind of the flow to work with trademarks and entrepreneurs?
So, I originally thought I wanted to dive into criminal law because I would be great in the courtroom. I would absolutely kill it in the courtroom. I had the sass. People would love it. Okay. It'd be very entertaining. In law school, I absolutely killed all the mock trials. 10 out of 10 every time. It would be great. I do belong there. However, I was friends with a criminal defense attorney at the time, and I was kind of bouncing around with him and seeing what the day-to-day was like. And I was like, this seems like my worst nightmare. We haven't even paused to eat, and I am hungry. I am exhausted. We have spent so much time in the car just driving from court to court, and it was a lot. It was just a lot. And when you practice a certain area like criminal law, you're only licensed in Arizona. It's a state matter. So you can only help people in Arizona. And if you want to go on vacation, how are you going to do that? Because you have court all day, every day, right? And you have to be there. And so I knew I wanted a different life for myself. I wanted to have freedom in all the senses, people seek, they desire is I want the time freedom. I want the location freedom. I want the money freedom. I want it all. And I don't want to have to choose. Right. I think a lot of people feel like they have to choose one or the other. And I said, no, I'm not choosing. I don't want to choose. And so I fell into this type of law, which is intellectual property and brand protection. And it's been amazing because I don't have to go to court, right? So I can work from wherever. I am not tied to a specific location because it's federal. So I get to help people across the world. It is a lucrative area of law. I get to help people secure rights to their brand, which is just incredible. It's an amazing thing to do. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I fell into the work that I do.
So I coach a lot. I do a lot of business coaching and marketing coaching. And I always start with values. Like, what do you value? And I think it's so brave that you started there too. Like you've said vacations a couple of times, right? Like, how dare they say they're going to give me a 2-week vacation and pay for it in 5 years? Now you're saying like, when will I take vacation if I'm going to do this? Like your value is freedom. And so it's so beautiful that you've created a business around that top value for yourself. And I think it's such a good reminder for everybody, right? You can have your cake and you can absolutely devour it. And it's all possible for you as long as you're lining yourself up with what your heart really, really wants and getting clear with that.
You can share your cake because I think what's so fun about what I do too is it allows me to be relatable because all the people that I'm working with also value and desire those same things. They want that freedom, right? And so yeah, it creates a point of connection and relatability.
And creating a really strong brand is part of creating freedom for yourself, right? And you have a very thoughtful process and very thoughtful offerings. And I would love to just dive into a few of them because the people that are listening to this podcast are I'm assuming most likely business owners, entrepreneurs. They're either settled in their service type or they're maybe thinking about starting. So if you're talking to those entrepreneurs right now, what do they need when they're thinking about how do I actually create a brand that's going to be sustainable? And then how do I make sure it's protected, which is exactly what you do. So give me kind of the top few things that every entrepreneur should be thinking about no matter what stage of business they're in.
So when it comes to building a brand, there's of course things you want, especially if you want to create a strong brand, meaning you want to have the good design. You want to have a good overall brand presentation, what you're conveying to people. You want to have good copy. You want to have good messaging. But the way I talk about everything is similar to a house, right? So if you are building a house, what are you going to do first? Are you going to paint the walls or are you going to lay the foundation? And the obvious answer is you're going to lay the foundation because you have to. Because if you start painting the walls and you don't have that foundation laid, anyone can come over and just push that house over. It's not going to weather a storm, right? It's going to fall over. And so when it comes to these things that are also extremely important and they do help build your brand, I can attest that. I mean, they've helped build my brand. I have the beautiful design. I have that strong messaging. They are 100% necessary and helpful on brand builders. However, you need solid legal foundations before you could start building these, before you start painting the walls. Otherwise, all of that can be for nothing. So oftentimes I see people investing so many things in their brand because they think this is what I need. This is what I need. It's going to, up level me, and it will up level you. However, it's not going to weather a storm. So the second they face a copycat, the second someone steals their content, the second someone steals something in regards to their brand, the second someone tries breaching a contract, they enter a state of panic, right? It sends them into a tizzy, which I get it because legal issues aren't fun to deal with, but you have much more safety if you are protected from the beginning. And that comes from laying that strong legal foundation from the beginning before you start doing all these things to scale. I think there's a sense of safety that you need to have to really start scaling your business to the level that you want. And obviously you need to have systems in place, right? If I said, most people are like, oh, if you just give me 100 clients today, it'll solve all my problems. No, well, it's going to create more problems. I could give you 100 clients today, but you're not going to know how to handle it, right? You have to be set up to be able to handle all of those clients. And so similar to that, you have to be set up to have those legal protections so you know that you can weather any storm, because it's not a if it happens sort of thing, it's a when it happens sort of thing. I've been in business long enough and I've worked with enough people who've been in business for long enough, I can tell you it does happen. It's just a matter of time.
I love the house idea because I talk about that a lot, and creating your brand is so important. Systems, process, all those things are important. At what point, because we have this conversation a lot because we build a lot of brands, and I always like to ask, have you started this process with an attorney for the name, for your trademark, for all these things? And most people haven't even thought of it. So I'm curious, Chandler, if you could give people kind of a glimpse into ideal timing, they get an idea for a program and this name comes to them in dream time and they wake up and they're like, it's going to be this thing. What should they do next? Should they call a brand designer right away or should they call you first? Obviously call you to talk to me through that process, right? Because I think that's where everyone's like running and gunning, right? We're just like throwing stuff out there and being like, will this stick? Talk to me about this intentional process to really build that foundation.
So I want to preface this by saying that I know all of this is going to sound so biased. Okay. Like I always tell people, I'm going to preface this by saying, this is what I do. So it's going to sound biased, but I promise you, go work with someone else. You don't even have to work with me on it. I'm trying, help me help you. Right.
Yes. Well, Chandler, that's why you're here. You're the expert here. So really educate the listeners, because again, unless they have had that copycat experience or something like threaten their brand, most business owners that we work with have not even thought about this process yet. And it always shocks me a little bit, but then I think, okay, but who's actually out there saying this day in, day out, except for a lawyer, which it sounds scary and kind of overwhelming. And God, brand design is way more fun than talking to you. Well, maybe not you. You're very fun. So,
Yes,
so yeah. So talk me through the I wake up, I have this idea for some fantastic
yeah.
mastermind name. What do I do?
So you contact me and I will tell you why. So the reason is twofold. You can protect an idea before you launch it. So you don't have to launch something before you secure rights to it. That's number one. That is actually the way I've filed everything for myself. That's the way I do relaunches. That's the way I file for a lot of my clients when they come to me, prior to launching. The reason I tell people to come prior to launching is because of the fact, two things. Number one, you want to put your mark on it. You want to put your protection on it before you go public with it. Everyone wants virality. How much do you want virality if everyone's going to copy you and take what you've worked so hard to build, right? Unless you can say you own it, what are you building, right? You're building all this stuff, you don't even own it, and you're getting all these eyes on it, which is more potential for copycats. If you don't have a registered trademark, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't do anything about it. If someone goes on and they decide to file it before you, then you're kind of SOL. So then you would never be able to own your brand. Then you would never be able to own what you're building. What's the point in building something if you can't own it, right? So number one, that. Number two is I want to make sure you're not launching something that someone else already owns. If someone else already owns a name, or something similar. It doesn't even have to be the same. That's what's crazy, right? It doesn't even have to be the same name. It can just be similar. It can sound similar. And it's not what everyone thinks it's similar. It's what the USPTO thinks or the law says is similar, right? Because it's also like, well, I've heard so many times, but mine has an apostrophe S at the end, but mine includes the word the beforehand. And I'm like, that doesn't create a distinction. That doesn't mean it's any different, right? So if you launch something that someone else already has, they already have rights to, and you make money on it, let's say this is your best launch to date, you have a 70, 100K launch, whatever it is, you absolutely kill it. The person who owns that name can come and say, you just capitalized off of my reputation, which means I get to take all the profits that you just made. Those don't belong to you. They belong to me. Yeah, it's crazy.
People can't see my face, but oh my gosh, that would be devastating. This actually happened to one of your clients recently, correct?
Yes. So I've seen it happen so many times. But yeah, one of my clients had something that wasn't even, it was similar. It wasn't the same, but it was similar. And this was prior to, us working together. And someone came after them and they had to pay out a 6-figure settlement. I know. But then on the flip side of that, right? Let's turn this into a positive. I don't want to just
yeah. Well, okay, yeah. Let's scare people, but the positive side is, what if your brand's protected and you could go after that?
Protected, exactly, and you own it, then you can go after them. So I had a client the other day who came to me and she's like, "Hey, I need a settlement agreement like right now." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Don't ask questions. I'll explain everything. Like, I need you to draw me up a settlement agreement." And I'm like, "Okay, what is happening?" She's like, "I just negotiated a deal, and she got a 15K settlement, just a quick 15K payday." Because someone was infringing on her brand.
Yeah.
That's the power of owning your IP and then leveraging your IP. And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize or utilize it. I mean, it's the ultimate business hack because, again, like I said, it's not if it happens, it's when it happens.
Yeah. Okay, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about all the things, I'm sure there's like a little bit of panic running through everybody, and also the opportunity that this could be absolutely incredible for you if you take the next steps to really protect your brand. Chandler, what are, 3 to 5 legal things that every business owner needs immediately, right? We've talked about trademark. Talk to me about the other things. If I was just realizing, oh my gosh, I've got a lot of things that could go wrong here. What are the things that you're thinking, okay, this is what, if I were to start over again, this is what I would tell a new business owner?
If you have a website, you need terms of use and a privacy policy. If you don't have a privacy policy, you can be charged each time someone visits your site. I know it sounds annoying. I know it sounds like they're pesky little documents. I promise you, it's so much better than the alternative of getting fined every single time someone visits your site. That's just crazy. So a small investment, just solid templates can set you up for success, and you can repurpose those for, if you create another website, you create another business, you have the ability to use that on your sites. So number one, you absolutely need that. Number two is going to be, if you're working with clients, you need a client services agreement. Like that, don't do business without a contract. Not a good idea. I can't overstate that. I just can't overstate that. I've seen so many things go wrong when people do business without a contract. So that is so prime. And then if you are someone who you don't work with clients, but you sell digital products, or maybe you work with clients and you sell digital products, then you need terms of purchase. You need digital terms of purchase, because that's what's going to save you in the event someone, tries issuing a chargeback or something. And I can attest, I personally use my own template, and someone now this does not happen often, because if you know me and you follow me on social media, you're probably like, I don't want to cross her. Okay. I come across scary on social media, but like, secret is I'm kind of a teddy bear in real life. My friends always make so much fun of me. They laugh. They find it hysterical because they're like, your online presence is so funny compared to the real you that we know. But someone who doesn't know me personally, and they just from the online space, they tried issuing a chargeback on me. And it was crazy because they had purchased a live workshop, okay, live keyword, and then they didn't attend live. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I was uploading the recordings and everything, just not that I had to or was contractually obligated to, but I was trying to go above and beyond. And they were mad, I guess. So they went and issued a chargeback on me. And I was like, this is crazy. No way this is happening. And I'm not the one, and today's not the day. And so one thing about me is I come with receipts every single time. I will always come with receipts. And so, yeah, I, did everything I had to do, and the bank sided with me. So yeah, you come out on top. But it's one of those things where if you're selling digital products, you don't want someone buying all your digital products and then issuing chargebacks on every single one. And if you don't have terms of purchase in place, you're SOL. So that's something you want to make sure that you have in place, is a solid terms of purchase.
That's so good. That's so good. Can you talk me through I agree with all those things. I love all those things, have them all in place, because that was one thing I didn't realize right away when I was, starting my business, was just how much opportunity there was for things to go wrong. Like, people are not operating necessarily in business from the good of their heart or just to be a good person, right? So you have to really bring in that very masculine side of things where you're saying, like, we need these things in place, and there's beautiful reasons for those. So I love that. Talk to me, though, about the trademark process. I've gone through this a couple of times now with my stuff. It was a lot faster the first time I did it than the second time that I've been doing it. But can you talk people through, like, if they get this idea for a name, you're saying protect your IP first. So what, they call you on the phone, and then talk me through kind of the steps that you take people through for a specific trademark, and what does that entail? Is it just the name? Is it their framework? Is it their methodology? Give people kind of a scope, because I think it can be really overwhelming.
See, there's likely multiple brand assets that you can trademark, and that is where I find most people get overwhelmed. So I never want to overwhelm people, but because it can be a lot. You can trademark a lot of things. You can trademark the overall name of your brand. You can trademark your logo. You can trademark the name of your podcast. You can trademark a membership. You can trademark your method. You can trademark your program name, your course name, events, like the name of an event, anything that is used as a brand asset. You can trademark your slogan, your tagline. Products, big in the product game, you absolutely need to trademark. If you have an online store, trademark. So there's a lot of different things that you can trademark. When it comes to the trademarking process, there's the first thing I want to know is this a strong enough mark, right? So first we do an analysis of, is this a strong mark and a strong brand name to trademark? Not all marks are created equal, right? Sometimes it's like, hey, this is, for example, if my law firm was called The Law Firm, That doesn't tell you anything. That doesn't tell you anything about my brand. It's not a brand identifier. It's just describing what it is. If an Italian restaurant was called the Italian restaurant, that does nothing, right? That's not protectable. It does nothing. However, when a mark has a unique element to it or anything that helps serve as a brand identifier that's helping build your reputation, that's what we want to make sure we're protecting. And so first we do a clearance search, a full clearance search to make sure that the name is even good to go and good to get filed. If, for example, it is high risk, meaning we do a search and it comes back and it's like, hey, someone else already has this, it's not smart to move forward with it, then we let you know you can't move forward with this mark, right? It's not a good idea to move forward with this mark. Reason being, one, I'm not in the business of wasting people's time or money, so I'm not going to file a trademark for you if I can't get it through. Number one. Number two is that I don't want you to launch something that you can never own. I don't want you to launch something that walks the line of infringing on someone else's brand. So once the clearance stage is done, if everything is good to go and we've, deemed it clear, then we move on to the actual filing. And that's where we prepare the application, walk it all the way through the process. A lot of people think, oh, it's just, and I see this all the time, oh, it's just a simple application. I'm going to do it every single time. And they come to me every single time. And I see people do these, these cheaper alternatives, and I bite my tongue. I used to try and fight it a lot. And now I'm like, I'm done fighting it. Learn the hard way. Like I'm someone who I got to go through it to learn too. So be my guest, go through it. I actually onboarded a client yesterday because she used a company, I'm not going to say which one, but she used a company and to file it. And the thing is, these companies that do this legal work, they're not attorneys, they're document preparation companies. And so number one, they don't really know you or your brand because it's just kind of like a funnel. They're just funneling so many people through. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But number two is they're not infusing any strategy into your application. And they're probably not doing that clearance phase either. So if you file the mark, if you invest in this, you think, oh, I'm saving a little bit of money, you're probably going to end up spending more in the long run. For example, this was yesterday, the client that we onboarded, she used this company, her trademark got a rejection. And she's like, is this something that's fixable? And I'm like, I don't think so. This wasn't even filed in a way that makes sense, because when you own some unit in connection with your goods or services, it wasn't filed in a way that it made sense with her services. It wasn't filed in a comprehensive way to protect everything that she does. And the proof, so when you submit an application, you have to show proof. And the proof that was submitted, I was just like, what is, like, this is irresponsible. These companies are even doing this. So she then not only paid that company, but then she just fully hired me to do the whole trademark process for her all over again. And I mean, it'll work this time. We'll do it right, but it's one of those things where, yeah, you want to make sure you're doing it right from the very beginning, because it's technical and it's not just, oh, this is just a simple filing. That's what I hear so much. I'm like, it is so nuanced. If you only knew all the minute details that go into it, you would be astounded.
Yeah. I think that's a really great color for people, because there's so many, if you Google, like, how do I get a trademark? There's so many, like, here's how to do it yourself. But it's just like, it's like with everything, right? I always say, like, you hired us to be marketing experts for you. Your team doesn't need to know everything there is to know about why a website will work the way it does, because we know, right? It's same with this. So that's beautiful color. Okay. I'm wondering if you could give a little bit of insight into how long the initial process works, right? Where if I come up with because again, digital online entrepreneurs are trying to move at the speed of the internet, which is, it's so fast. So I get this idea for a mastermind. I call you, you're doing a search to see if it's even okay. Yep. How long does that take before you're like, you know what? It's in process now. So go ahead and create brand assets, go ahead and invest in your logo. At what point do you tell people this is safe to move forward to invest in those things? Because that's also a big investment.
If you're working with us, I can tell you within about a week or two.
Love that.
If you're working with us, because the way I work is I give two options. So either well, if we'll do the search, and if it's low risk, I'm confident this is getting through, right? So if it's high risk, then I'm telling you it's not smart to move forward with this. If you choose to move forward with it at that point, it's on you. Yeah, it's not smart to move forward with this. I'm telling you, don't do it. If it's low risk and everything is good to go, and we get that application in, let us get that application in, which again, I work quick because it's first to file, right? Trademarks are first to file. So I've waited 3 days to file my own trademark before, and biggest mistake of my life. Okay. I waited too long and someone went on and filed something within that 72 hours. I kid you not. And I'm like, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. So when I filed trademarks for my clients, I'm like, as soon as you give me that green light, I don't care what I'm doing. I'm stopping. I'm preparing that application. I'm sending it to you for your signature and I'm submitting it. We're getting it in as soon as possible. Yeah. So number one, that, and then number two, it's fun. This is actually, you'll be kind of the first to know. So we're launching a new page on my site. It's kind of like a trademark sales page. Before we just had a services page. It's going to be a trademark sales page. It explains a little bit more of everything in detail. But what I'm really excited about is we're offering a money back guarantee. So either I can't guarantee results. I can never guarantee, that's unethical. I cannot guarantee you. But what I can guarantee you is you'll either get your trademark or you'll get your money back. Yeah. So, I mean,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of genius. But also, I know what I'm doing and I know this is going to work. As long as you listen to me, I should preface it by saying, as long as you listen to me, you will get a trademark or you will get your money back. If you don't listen to me, that's on you. Okay.
That's on you. That's like with everything. That is so great. Okay, great. Yes. We're going to link up your website and I want you to tell people where they can find you. But let's talk about your brand real quick because your brand is hot. Like, it's a sexy brand. And when I first saw you on Threads and I don't know, that was such a quick connection. Yep. I was immediately just like, okay, I don't know who this girl is, but I am now obsessed within like 5 seconds. So talk to me about creating your brand, because as people are thinking of like, what name should I choose? And then I do the search, how did you use everything that you know to create like what I think is just the hottest layer brand out there?
So prior to being Lethal Legal, I was Chandler J Law. And I hadn't settled on a name that felt aligned. I knew, and at one point it was just me, right? And I knew that. And so Chandler J Law, everything was personally branded. And that was great. It allowed me to leverage my personal brand. But I also knew I wanted to shift away from that a little bit because I found a name that felt really aligned, but I still wanted it to be on brand, but in a little bit of an elevated way, right? So I think that the brand, it's hard to explain. I'll have to show you my old website too, because they're both badass, but they're badass in unique ways, right? In just different ways. And so when we were building out Lethal Legal, I knew I wanted it to be different from the Chandler J brand, but I knew I wanted it to still have that element of this is different, this is unique, it's elevated, and I feel safe. Like I feel like there's a sense of safety when people, I mean, unless you're on the flip side of it, right? If you're like, you're hiring me, people are like, I got an inquiry the other day that was like, hey, I've seen everything, and I feel like you have that approach where you can be aggressive if I need you to, but you still have like a softer approach if needed to. And so I think it was about finding that balance of not being scary to my potential clients, but being scary to everyone else, right? If you're on the flip side of that. And so when we were creating the brand, we wanted to really invoke those feelings of safety and confidence and peace of mind while still maintaining that unique edge. I would call it an edge.
I love this. So for everyone listening, go check out Chandler. Your website's YourLethalLegal. Is that right? .com?
YourLethalLegal.com.
Okay. It's just so good. And Chandler is very active on Instagram, social media. She's just very fun to follow. You do come across as very aggressive and tough, which I like, because again, you're busting through the noise with things that people need to hear. And legal stuff, if anything's overwhelming or scary, most of us are going to tune it out until we absolutely have to, right? And so I think you're approaching it in it's just a fun way. It's unique, and I think it makes people think, and you've amassed a great following from it. So that's very cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was Well, it's one of those things where people don't come to me until they're like, oh no. So it happens every day. I hear it every day. Someone 2 days ago was like, you were in my head, and it was like, Chandler told me to do this. Now I need to do it. So my biggest message is people, it's cheaper and more effective to take a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. Because when you're being proactive, you already have that sense of confidence, that sense of safety, that peace of mind. When you're being reactive, number one, who knows? Like you might be SOL, but number two, it's like, okay, now this is going to cost more. Now it's more of a headache. It's more of a stressor, rather than just being like, okay, this is like a nuisance, but I got it handled, right? So yeah.
Is there any pre-work that people could do before they call you? Like if they do get that great idea for something, is there just a few things they could do that would make sense before they call you and then you say like, sorry, dude, that's not going to work? Are there any parameters you give people like?
I would say knowing what you want to do with a brand name. Like a lot of people are like, well, I have this brand name. And I'm like, okay, well, but what do you want to own it in connection with? Right. I need to know what you want to do with it. If you don't have anything you want to do with it, you can't just own something just to own it, because we're not going to monopolize a word or words just in connection with everything. You can't do that. But if there's a certain way you want to use it, meaning you want to use it in connection with your goods or your services, what are those goods or services? That's what I need to know.
I think that's good advice, because that was something I learned the first go around was, there's different classes that you can, trademark in. And I was like, oh, I have no idea what that means. And so, we put in for different classes specifically for my company's name, but that was all new to me. And the average person has no idea. So
I also think maybe I think the biggest thing is having an open mind, because a lot of people will come to me and they'll be like, hey, I've already done a search on this and it's good to go. And I'm like, what did you use to search? And they're like, the government website. And I'm like, okay. So here's the thing. Love that you know about that. But the reason I don't even like telling people about it, because they use it as like Bible. And I'm like, no, that this is not the case. Actually, if you type in Starbucks with one S, all of Starbucks trademarks come up. If you type in Starbucks with two S's, nothing comes up. That doesn't mean you can trademark Starbucks with two S's, right? Or it can be like the same word, but if you put a space in the middle of it, like nothing will come up. Whereas if you type it all together, then everything will come. So it's concerning to me when people rely on that too heavily. So I would say the other thing would be just have an open mind, even if you have looked on this website, because I hope that there's nothing, too similar, but we can't use tests as the end all be all. We can't use that government website as proof that nothing else like that exists.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, and not being too emotionally attached to anything in business and just letting it kind of be what it is. With origin stories, which is my coaching methodology, I ended up having to call another guy that had origin stories, but he's a videographer. So we did an agreement together, but it was such a lovely like connection and call. And now I have this really great friend now in Nashville that, does something completely different. And so, there's so many opportunities too, where just because it's out there doesn't mean it's completely taken, right? Because again, the categories and the different things, which I think is what you're saying too, is saying, just because you check it out doesn't mean yes or no. That's why you have you.
Yes, exactly.
I love that. Okay, Chandler, this has been so wildly helpful. Thank you for sharing all of this wisdom. So good. Is there anything else that you think people need to know about working with you, about trademark process, that you just think you share so much goodness on social media? So everyone go follow Chandler. But is there anything that is like your heart's mantra when you're like thinking about business and this season of your life and what you want people to know?
Yes, I would say one, I'm not one of those people that's pushy with sales. So if someone comes to me and they're like, this is too expensive, or it's just out of my, I'm like, okay, yeah, like that, totally fair. I'm not here to argue that for you. I'm not here to make a decision for people. I'm here to help people make the best decision for themselves. What I want to offer as perspective is that a investment in your brand, right? If you're investing in your branding and your copy and your design, I can first of all tell you all of that is more expensive than a trademark, number one. But number two is that when you invest in your brand, you're investing in property. Like it gives you legit property. You own your intellectual real estate. And when you have that, you can then leverage it to make more money. And so when analyzing, is this in my budget right now or not? I offer the perspective of what could you lose out on if you don't do this? Because for me, I can tell you I waited 3 days and I lost out on the brand name I wanted. Right. So if someone's like, oh, I'm going to revisit this in a few months, a lot can happen in a few months. And I don't want someone to lose out on something they're building because of that. Right. And so, number one, that. Number two is that a decision that you make today can significantly impact tomorrow or the day after, right? And so if you find someone copying you, there's something you can actually do about it if you own your brand. If if someone starts copying you and they have this crazy launch, but you don't own your brand, there's nothing you can do about it. Whereas if you would have had a trademark, you could have gotten a settlement for it. So it's one of those things where it's about perspective, but I also respect that everyone's on their own individual journey. There's investments. There's some things that I get. I had someone tell me the other day, no, like now's not the right time. I'm in the middle of a move. Moving is expensive. I get it. I just went through it. That's valid. You know what I mean? So I get it 100%. I just also want to ensure that people are protected on the flip side of that. Yeah. And not let too much time pass before they protect themselves.
Your story about the 3-day change reminds me a little bit of, are you familiar with Elizabeth Gilbert and her Big Magic book?
I'm not.
Okay. So Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she wrote this book on Big Magic, which is about creativity and this idea that, creativity is almost, the Romans and the Greeks had the idea that it was a genius or this thing that would come to you and give you an idea, but our ideas don't belong to us. They're just moving around the world. And if we choose to claim them, they can be ours and we will work with them together. And if not, they're going to flit off to someone else and work with them. And I think about that a lot when I get these ideas, because I'm like, oh, is this an idea that I'm going to choose to pursue? Or do I need to let this idea move on to the next person? And there are so many moments in business, I think, where we have an idea that comes to us and it just seems almost divine, right? Like, where did this idea come from? And I love that you're saying, like, even within 3 days, because collectively we're all, things are just moving at a pace where there's similar ideas happening all over the world, and who's gonna grab it and go with it. So not to keep scarcity at the forefront of this, but I do think it's a good reminder that if you get an idea and it feels like it's a thing,
yeah,
call Chandler. You keep saying this is a big investment. And can you give people, and obviously we won't hold you these prices as inflation happens and things change, but can you give people kind of what is an initial investment price point that they should think about when they're thinking about searching to see if they can even trademark something, and then maybe just trademark in general? What is an overall estimate that they could expect to spend? Because I think that helps give perspective too, against if you do a 100K launch and your trademark only costs this much, really, this is what you've got going on. Can you give us just kind of a broad range for people to think about?
It's generally going to be between the $2,500 to $3,500 mark. Yeah. So it depends, right? Always depends, but that's generally what it's going to be around.
Yeah. So a small investment, really, when you're looking.
I know, compared. That's what I'm here. Every time I've hired a copywriter or designer, I've spent more than
100%.
Yeah, than a trademark. So.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're creating brands for, upwards of 25, 30K to do, visuals. And so I love to ask people, like, have you even started this process? Because I don't want you to spend, 30K with my company and then turn around and be like, oh my gosh, we can't do this. So yeah. Oh, Chandler, you're so amazing. Do you have, thank you for that piece of advice. And I think that perspective, any last business books or legal books or services that you offer that we should go check out? Give me that one last thing. And then where can people find you?
Contract templates. I have all these amazing contract templates. So for people who are like, hey, I need legal, but I don't want to spend thousands on an attorney to draft them for me, I have contract templates for pretty much everything you could possibly imagine. I also have a free guide if you're like, hey, I don't want to invest yet, but I want to learn more just about all things legal. My best information it's a 70+ page free guide on my site. So you can find me on Instagram at lawyer Chandler J. And then my website is yourleafillegal.com.
So good. Thank you so much for this. Everyone go follow Chandler. Go protect your stuff.
Yes.
As you're creating amazing brands, think of the foundation. I love that we have very similar philosophies there because your brands can change the world, and having this protection is just one step closer to making sure you're creating sustainable, amazing brands that will serve your family and your community and your legacy for years and years to come. So, Chandler, thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Business Origin Stories. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Join me on Instagram and make sure to sign up for our weekly email.